Hi, thanks for joining me for another video from Counselor Tips. This video is not a diagnosing video. This video is definitely not a video for counselors working with clients who are experiencing acute trauma. This video is also not a video for counselors that are working in a crisis hotline situation. This video does not cover trauma-informed care or techniques. This video is about learning to hear the key words and themes that clients share when they're in session with you. Stick with me as we cover this topic in detail to help you better understand the differences between trauma and clients who have life disturbances and difficulties. It is important to understand that today, one of the key words that we hear in our culture is trauma. Clients are looking up information on the internet and self-diagnosing, and what I've discovered is that many counselors are over-diagnosing clients with PTSD, when in fact clients have had significant struggles or life disturbances or challenges in relationships, but some of what they've experienced is not considered trauma. I want to stress that when you're working with clients, please be very cautious as a counselor as to the language you choose to use with them. If you label stressful, trying, or adverse relationships or circumstances as traumatic, the client is going to latch on to this word that you use and repeat it to you, to themselves, and others. When we repeat words or stories or narratives that we tell ourselves and others, we actually end up creating these rigid pathways in our brains that become like superhighway synapses that are difficult to get off or divert from. Language matters. Before we dig into what constitutes trauma, let's dig into what's considered some of life's difficult and adverse circumstances. Repeated life stressors and difficulties at work, in relationships, in marriages, in hobbies where people are doing activities, involved in churches, in places where clients volunteer, can feel overwhelming and sometimes frustrating. Repeated exposure to parents or a spouse with addiction or alcoholism, loss of jobs, stressful circumstances where a person has had to repeatedly move, change schools, or poverty is not necessarily trauma. The first thing you want to understand is that there may be a delay in the client's sharing from a traumatic experience to what they're sharing with you in counseling. You may be the first person to hear about the client's past trauma. Let's discover how we can actually screen for trauma. As the client shares their story around their experiences and exposures, I want you to listen for key words and themes that clients share when they're telling their story. But don't implant ideas by asking questions that lead the client towards a trauma narrative. When clients are sharing, we look for recent recollections of disturbing memories, thoughts, or images from stressful past experiences. Two things we need to highlight here are disturbing and past. We all have memories that we may process over and over as the mind is completing, making sense of, and filing those memories. It is important to note that when humans have key memories of unpleasant or challenging experiences or situations, some of us will still get angry or sad or frustrated because we've not completed or made sense of and filed the memory. Some of us will have no feelings of attachment to the memory because we've worked through that memory. Either which way, remember, the mind likes to pull memories out and work through them, whether we've completed them or not. But are the memories that the client is having from the past so disturbing where they cannot be completed? Are they struggling to connect with what they have experienced that has prepared them with solutions or alternatives for future experiences or situations? Does the memory reappear so frequently that the mind doesn't have an idea of a place where to file it? Sometimes memories are appearing in dreams. Is the client having repeated, disturbing dreams of the experience or situation? As we continue to screen for trauma, is the client sharing instances where they will suddenly act and feel as though the disturbing situation is happening again, like they're reliving it, similar to having a flashback? This may appear as a client having difficulty concentrating or making decisions, a client being overly alert to people or situations where no real threat actually exists. The client may share that they're excessively jumpy in situations or around people where most people wouldn't generally get startled. The key themes to note here are no real threat and excessive responses. Does the client share about events, activities, situations, or people they specifically avoid because it reminds them of an unresolved disturbance? Are they or have they distanced themselves from people that love and support them? We want to listen for patterns or examples of avoidance. We also want to notice the client's affect, which can appear in various forms, such as flat, withdrawn, tense, or fearful. We also want to listen for a variety of themes and feelings: sad, depressive, anxious, apprehensive. We also want to observe a client's themes of cognitive choices, such as minimizing, denial, becoming withdrawn, or needy. How does the client respond to their recollections or dreams? Do they become very upset when there is no direct or underlying reason? Very upset can appear as explosive or irritable or outbursts when these behaviors were not present before the disturbing experience. The key things we're looking for here, though, is that the client will have an exaggerated or incongruent response to the current experience or situation. What physical symptoms does the client describe? Is the client reporting any physical symptoms at all? Some examples might be that the client describes that they feel like their heart is pounding, that they get sweaty, or may have trouble breathing. Other clients may report difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. But difficulty falling or staying asleep can also be anxiety, where a person hasn't learned to detach from their thoughts in a healthy way and allows their mind to race around doing what the mind has been designed to do, which is think. Remember, when you're investigating these symptoms that the client is reporting, do not lead them. And we want to definitely make sure that the symptoms that the client is reporting are not related to anxiety versus trauma. Let's remember we've all been exposed to challenging, difficult, and disturbing events, relationships, and circumstances. Some people are innately more resilient than others. It's like they're just built to be resilient. Some people have learned resiliency and can progress quickly through any kind of disturbances. They can make sense of these disturbances, complete the feelings and thoughts around them, and arrive at an understanding of how any of these difficulties, challenges, or disturbances have impacted their life and how it can aid through their continued journey of life, potentially offering solutions to future challenges or disturbances. Other people may get stalled and end up in the chair across from you as your client. Whichever client you end up working with, it is important to remember that we do not want to lead clients into a trauma narrative. We want to adequately screen clients by listening for keywords and themes that they share when they're naturally just disclosing their story. I have a couple of other videos that will help support this current video. They're more interrelated videos. Please consider watching those. One is about resiliency. Another video that I've addressed is the differences in diagnosing ADHD, anxiety, and PTSD. These three diagnoses are often confused with one another, and if you diagnose in haste without collecting all the important information from a client's story, or you have potentially led the client by asking leading questions that lead them towards defining their experiences as trauma, you could potentially do something grave by misdiagnosing the client, and then they will not receive the interventions or possible psychotropic support that they would need. Thanks for joining me for this brief video on trauma and looking for keywords and themes. If you like this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up. It helps other people find videos that can help them, and it's important as counselors that we help one another. If you feel you're learning from this channel, consider subscribing to it, and if you believe a counselor that you know could benefit from this video on distinguishing the differences between life's disturbing events and actual trauma, then please consider sharing it with them. We all can learn from one another. See you soon.